prediction. About 30 years ago, I submitted a story, which was a kind of unrelated fantasy, to a magazine for submitting novels. Although I call it a fantasy, it was more like a dream diary that I was into at the time. I took notes of the dreams I had that day, completed a short story based on them, and submitted it to the magazine. On the recommendation of the publisher, I was lucky enough to make my debut, and I went on to publish several books. One of them was a collection of short stories on the theme of natural disasters, but it was criticized as too absurd and the first edition was never reprinted due to a large inventory. The contents of the book were as follows: a famous large volcano will erupt on XXDH day in 19XX and many small volcanoes in Japan will erupt in a chain reaction, or on XXDH day in 20XX, an earthquake cloud will be generated over the capital city by a certain method to cause an artificial earthquake and collapse the city functions. I am certainly embarrassed to think about it now. The dates given here were dreamed or came to me at random after the fact, so of course I have no basis for them. There is no way that there is. One of them is on March X, 201X, a great disaster will occur in the suburbs of the capital city. However, it does not describe the catastrophe in detail, but rather how people will be affected by it and what actions they will take. Of course, the date is also appropriate. However, the catastrophe actually happened by chance on that March X, 201X. Years later, this short story became a bit of a topic of conversation as it predicted future disasters. At the time, this short story was introduced on a blog as a masterpiece or lost novel that did not sell well, and as social networking sites became more popular, the content of this book spread and it became known as a prophecy book. The book contains 10 short stories, all of which are clearly dated, even though only one of the stories really matches the date. One of the last stories in the book states, on the 5th day of X month in the year 202X, a disaster will occur. This date is a contrived or lazy and bullshit one, so to speak, as it is a periodic occurrence of a small, very common natural phenomenon that cannot even be called a disaster. So I never said or wrote this as a prophecy. Recently, however, it turned out that there were many people who believed in it, not only in Japan but also abroad. A couple of years ago, a publishing company published the book abroad as a trial, and it unexpectedly sold more copies than expected. This was taken seriously, and about a month or two before May 5th, the number of travelers from that country began to decline, causing confusion mainly in the travel industry. And not only that, but coincidentally, one of the islands in the country had been experiencing frequent small earthquakes, with the largest registering just under 6 on the Japanese seismic scale. TV and the internet were talking about it day after day, and no matter how much they reported that this was a baseless hoax, it was no longer enough. The comments section of my social networking site for the past few days was in a tizzy. I can't wait to see how this world is going to change. You are the second Nostradamus. I believe in prophecy. I quit my job and went on a wandering journey because I believe in prophecy. All the prophecies of the past have failed. What are you going to do when you miss a prophecy? If the prophecy comes off, I will torch your house. And its content was becoming more extreme by the day, so I decided to close the comment section for the moment. Recently, I have seen a few people who flipped the curtains a bit and looked out and saw me for a moment before running away. Apparently, they had tracked me down at my home without my knowledge. And finally, that May 5th came. Not knowing what to expect today, I got scared and asked my editor, Mr. M, to come to my house in the light of day. M is the person who has been in charge of me for the past 3 years. According to M, there were some suspicious people around his house and they seemed to be asking around his house. I was sorry, but I asked him to stay until the date changed. When I turned on the TV, I found that every information program was featuring a prophecy and calling it a baseless hoax, as if it was just a convenient story for the program. As I turned off the TV and spent restless hours listening to appropriate music programs on the radio, it was dusk. The atmosphere today was somehow not conducive to going out, and the only meal we had was a cup of ramen, but even if we ate it together, we couldn't taste the flavor of it because of our mood. When the sun had completely set, it was getting a little noisy outside somehow. Looking out the window, I saw quite a few people. From here I could see 7 or 8, but in reality there seemed to be a few more. I could read handwritten messages on the cardboard, large sheets of cardboard, or other so-called placards in their hands. It said, "Crook, false prophet, give me my job back, your life ends today," and so on. And so on and so forth. For me, and not only me, I was in a terrible situation. After a nightmarish time, I suddenly realized that the clock was pointing to 11:30. I could feel more people gathering around the house. Because, although we could not hear them well, some of them were shouting, and it was obvious that they were disturbing the neighbors, so we decided to seek the help of the police. When I called and explained the situation to the police officer, he told me that a neighbor who was also being disturbed had reported it, and that he would be dispatched to the scene now, soon. The sound of sirens could be heard, which were getting closer and closer. I watched from my window, and the number of people who must have been around the house slowly dwindled. When the police car stopped, I could see some men getting excited and eating at the officers, and others scattering. When things calmed down, I went outside and explained to the 2 policemen who I was and what had happened, and they were sympathetic, saying that they were glad it didn't turn out to be a big deal. After thanking and apologizing to the police officers, I returned to the station in a police car. The house was empty, but instead it was littered with trash, including the placards and plastic bottles. I went back to the house and brought a garbage bag and I picked up the garbage with a heavy heart. I just made up a story about a dream I had. Well, I guess we can only be glad that nothing happened today. I guess so. I casually checked my phone and before I knew it, the date had changed and it was the 6th of X month. I'm just saying that it was just my fantasy, but who the hell believed it and spread it around without my permission? My words were never heard by anyone other than M. This is the end of this story. Thank you for listening to the end.